She was accused of theft, but when the billionaire asked to see the CCTV footage, something completely unexpected happened. Sarah, a young sales assistant, stood in the glittering jewelry department, tears streaming down her cheeks. A police officer who had just approached her was holding shiny steel handcuffs in his hand. A wealthy and haughty customer, Mrs. Evelyn Stone, watched the scene with a triumphant expression on her face. Sarah, trying to prove her innocence to everyone, spoke with a trembling voice, realizing that her life was falling apart. Just as she was about to give up and accept her fate, a tall, athletic man with a wise gaze, known as Billionaire Aaron Black, stepped forward and confidently declared, "Show the surveillance footage." Everyone froze in anticipation, not knowing what would happen next. So, let's start from the beginning. Sarah was a simple girl, but she had big dreams in her heart. Unfortunately, her life was overshadowed by problems that were just as big. She lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town with her mother, who was suffering from a serious illness, and her younger brother, whom she had to take care of. Her father had abandoned them many years ago, leaving the family to fend for themselves. Every day was a struggle for Sarah, a fight for survival. To feed her family, she worked 2 jobs. During the day, she was a saleswoman in a prestigious shopping center, and in the evening, she was a waitress in a small cafe. They barely had enough money for the bare necessities, rent, medicine for her mother, and food. Despite all her trials, Sarah remained a kind and honest person. In her heart, she never lost faith that hard work and integrity were the keys to a happy life. Her main dream was to provide financial security for her family, save up for her mother's treatment, and give her brother the opportunity to get a quality education at a prestigious college. Working at St. Willow's shopping mall was especially important to her for this reason. The jewelry department where she worked was surrounded by luxury that was worth more than she could ever earn in her lifetime. She knew she couldn't afford to make even the slightest mistake. Every day started the same way: greeting customers, polishing display cases, and arranging new jewelry. She felt like she was part of this world of glamour, even though she was only a small part of it. She dreamed that one day her life would change and she would be able to afford at least a piece of the beauty that surrounded her. However, today was not the day her dream would come true, but the day it would tragically end. Around noon, Mrs. Evelyn Stone, a regular customer and well-known gossip in town, entered the store. With her cold, haughty face and always impeccably stylish appearance, adorned with expensive clothes and jewelry, she looked down on everyone and treated the staff like servants. This time she was attracted by a new necklace, and Sarah, as always, gave her the utmost attention and courtesy, took it out of the display case, and handed it to Mrs. Stone. While she was examining the jewelry, Sarah was distracted by another box, but that turned out to be a fatal mistake. In a split second, everything changed. Mrs. Stone exclaimed that the necklace was gone, and her accusing gaze immediately landed on Sarah. "She stole it. She just took it." Mrs. Stone's cry echoed throughout the mall. "I didn't take it. I didn't take it," Sarah exclaimed, trying to defend herself. "I was distracted for a second. I didn't see what happened." The manager, who had rushed over at the sound of the commotion, immediately sided with Mrs. Stone. "Sarah, you're fired," he announced dryly and emotionlessly. "And don't you dare leave until we've searched you." Those words hit Sarah like a bolt from the blue. Fired. That meant she wouldn't be able to pay for her mother's medication. Her cherished dream of a bright future for her brother, the only thing that kept her going, was shattered. Despair overwhelmed her. He appeared in the crowd that had gathered around the scene. Aaron Black. A frequent visitor to this shopping center, he never paid any attention to the staff. His word was law, and he always got what he wanted. Without showing any emotion, he made his way to the center of the commotion. His gaze fell on Sarah, whose face was covered in tears, and on Mrs. Stone, whose anger distorted her features. He remained silent, just listening intently. "If you are so sure of your innocence," he said, turning to Mrs. Stone, "then let's just review the camera footage. It's the simplest and most objective solution." His words seemed to shatter the silence. The crowd froze. Mrs. Stone stood transfixed, and the manager, who until that moment had exuded confidence, now looked confused. They weren't prepared for such a simple and clear proposal. Sarah felt a flash of hope in her chest. For the first time that day, she felt that she had a real chance to get the truth out. To understand the full extent of Sarah's despair at that moment, when she was handcuffed, you had to imagine her journey. Her day began before dawn, at 5 in the morning, when the whole city was still asleep. In the small kitchen of her modest home, she made breakfast for her younger brother Mike and brewed a soothing herbal tea for her mother, Helen, who was suffering from a serious illness. With each passing day, the illness robbed Helen of more and more of her strength, and all she could do was lie in bed. 15-year-old Mike was still too young to work, so the entire burden of responsibility fell on Sarah's shoulders. She worked 2 jobs, from morning to evening at a jewelry store and late into the night at a cafe. She brought her mother breakfast, kissed her gently on the forehead, and said softly, "Don't worry, Mom. Everything will be fine today. I'll make sure to get you the pills the doctor prescribed." A faint smile flitted across her mother's face. "Sarah, sweetheart, you work so hard. I'm so sorry you have to—" "It's okay, Mom. I can handle it," Sarah replied, trying not to let her mother see her tears. She didn't want her weakness to spoil her mother's day. Leaving the house, she left her brother still asleep. She had a long way to go on 2 buses to get to the shopping center. On the way, her thoughts turned to her brother, who dreamed of attending a prestigious college, but her family couldn't afford it. She thought about her mother, who needed expensive medical treatment. Her modest salary barely covered their basic needs, and she was constantly anxious, fearing that something might happen tomorrow and destroy their fragile stability. By the time she arrived at the shopping center, she was exhausted, but she always left her worries at the door. In this world of glitz and glamour, there was no room for weakness. Putting on her uniform, she smiled at those around her, trying to fit the image of the perfect salesperson in an upscale store. Her manager, Mr. Davis, was convinced that profit was the only thing that mattered. He didn't care about his employees. He was only interested in one thing: sales. If a customer was satisfied, then everything was fine. If a customer was dissatisfied, the employee was always to blame. That day was particularly busy at the shopping center. Sarah, as always, tried to be as attentive and friendly as possible to the visitors. However, her thoughts kept wandering home. She remembered the bill from the pharmacy that needed to be paid on time, the need to buy groceries for the whole week, and the fact that her modest budget would not allow her to buy her brother a decent birthday present. Mrs. Stone entered the store, a woman whose reputation preceded her. She was known not only for her wealth, but also for her arrogance. Her piercing, appraising gaze radiated the same coldness as the precious stones on her elegant necklace. For Mrs. Stone, visiting the store was more a demonstration of her superiority than shopping. She could spend hours admiring the jewelry and then leave without buying anything, leaving behind only a feeling of her own exclusivity. She always treated the staff with obvious disdain, and Sarah had already experienced her blatant rudeness more than once. That day, Mrs. Stone came in with the intention of buying a necklace. Sarah served her with all her politeness. When the customer asked for another box, Sarah, confident that she was holding the right necklace, turned away. At that moment, in just a second, Sarah's fate was sealed. When she returned, she found Mrs. Stone staring at the empty display case, with a distorted expression on her face. "Where is my necklace?" Her cry reverberated throughout the department, causing those around her to tremble. Sarah froze, unable to comprehend what had happened. The image of the necklace in Mrs. Stone's hands was still vivid in her mind. "I don't know," she whispered, her heart beating wildly, sensing something was wrong. Suddenly, Mr. Davis burst into the department. He already knew what had happened and had no doubt whose side he was on. His contempt was obvious, his gaze sliding over Sarah as if assessing a broken tool. Now he was ready to get rid of her, throw her away. The words of the manager, Mr. Davis, were like a sentence. He didn't even bother to listen to Sarah, focusing entirely on appeasing his influential client, Mrs. Stone. Seeing that the situation was turning in her favor, Mrs. Stone intensified her accusations against Sarah. "She stole my necklace right in front of me. It was a gift from my husband. It's priceless." The manager nodded, his expression full of contempt. "Don't worry, Mrs. Stone. We'll take care of it. Sarah needs to be searched immediately. I didn't take it, Sarah exclaimed, trying to defend herself. But her words were lost in the roar of the crowd. She was choking with hurt and humiliation, tears streaming down her cheeks, smearing her mascara, and the world seemed to be falling apart before her eyes. Thoughts of losing her job, being branded a thief, and subsequent imprisonment terrified her to the core. What would happen to her mother? What would happen to Mike? Suddenly, a police officer called by Mr. Davis entered the store. "What's going on here?" he asked, his gaze cold and impartial. "Officer, this girl stole my necklace," Mrs. Stone declared, approaching him. "I have proof." "She was standing right next to me," the manager interjected. "Officer, she's my employee. We've already started an internal investigation, but the customer insists on—" The police officer, who had dealt with similar situations many times before, nodded. He knew this scenario well. The rich accuse the poor, and the poor deny it. It was clear. "All right," he replied, looking at Sarah. "I'm going to have to search you." His words hit her like a shot. Sarah felt her legs buckle and struggled to sit down on a chair. She couldn't believe this was really happening. It was her worst nightmare come true. At that moment, Aaron Black approached them. Tall and elegant, his suit fit him perfectly, despite the crowd and commotion. He walked through the crowd, which seemed to part before him. His appearance was so unexpected and dramatic that everyone froze in silence. Aaron approached the manager, his gaze piercingly cold. "I hear there's been an incident," he said, his voice calm, but with such power in every word that no one dared to argue. "You seem to be accusing your employee of theft." The manager, whose confidence had just melted away, blushed. "Mr. Black, it's a minor mistake. We'll sort it out." "No mistake," Mrs. Stone interrupted. "I saw her do it myself." "Are you absolutely certain?" Aaron looked at her, and a mysterious spark appeared in his eyes that made her think. "Of course, I'm never wrong." "Then," Aaron said, his gaze returning to the manager, "have security review the camera footage. That will settle this once and for all. If she really stole the necklace, we'll find it on the video. If not, you'll have to apologize to her." Sarah, still sitting on the chair, felt a flash of hope in her heart. Finally, someone had suggested a sensible solution. Finally, someone had taken her side. She looked at Aaron, and gratitude flashed in her eyes. Not knowing the reasons for his actions, Sarah understood that he had given her a chance to prove her innocence. Anger overwhelmed Mrs. Stone and the manager. They had not anticipated this turn of events. They thought Sarah would simply be searched and the necklace would be found. But Aaron Black's intervention forced them to face the inevitable truth, and that prospect frightened them. The manager, his hands trembling, called security. "I'll ask them to prepare the records, Mr. Black," he said. "I'll accompany you," Aaron declared, "and I won't leave this place until we get to the bottom of this." He turned to Sarah. "Let's go," he said. "Go and prove your innocence." Sarah stood up, her legs still trembling, but a spark of hope lit up in her eyes. Fear gave way to determination. She followed him, knowing that this step would be her last chance to prove her innocence, and she was ready for it, ready to face the truth head on. The walk to the security room was short, but it felt endless to everyone. The atmosphere was tense. Mr. Davis, usually so confident and authoritative, walked with his head bowed, his hands visibly shaking. Mrs. Stone, her face contorted with rage, shot Sarah contemptuous glances, but her anger seemed to be more out of fear than determination. Despite her inner turmoil, Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite in her soul. While everyone around her was in turmoil, Aaron Black remained completely calm. He walked beside her, his composure like an impenetrable wall, protecting her from the threats around her. They entered the room and were greeted by a young security guard, whose gaze froze in surprise at such an unusual group. Without a moment's hesitation, he obeyed the order and inserted the flash drive with the camera footage into the computer. Aaron Black silently pointed to the monitor. The monitor displayed footage from a camera pointed at the jewelry department. The clock showed 12 noon. They saw Sarah smiling as she served Mrs. Stone. The video clearly showed Mrs. Stone trying on a piece of jewelry, holding it in her hands and examining it from all angles. And when Sarah was distracted to get another box, Mrs. Stone didn't put the necklace back on the display case. Instead, looking distracted, she put it in her purse and, as if nothing had happened, asked to see another piece of jewelry. Suddenly, Mrs. Stone, who had been looking at the screen with confidence, paled. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Her face was contorted with a mixture of horror and shame. It was unthinkable, absolutely monstrous. She, a wealthy and influential woman, had been caught in such a stupid lie. "Well, what do you mean?" Aaron Black asked, his words sounding as cold as ice. Mrs. Stone tried to find an excuse. I just didn't want to. I thought that you lied, accusing an innocent girl of theft. You called the police, and you, Mr. Davis, supported her lie without even bothering to try to understand the situation. Aaron's voice rang out, his gaze fixed intently on the manager, who was pale with excitement. "I thought that—" Mr. Davis began to mumble incoherently. "You simply didn't think. You were only trying to please a wealthy customer. Your behavior was humiliating and offensive to a person who was doing their job conscientiously. Your actions demonstrated unprofessionalism and a complete lack of humanity." The officer who had been silently watching the scene approached Sarah. "I'm sorry, miss," he said. "I was wrong." Sarah, who had been standing silently all this time, as if petrified, felt the enormous tension lift from her. She had been vindicated, her guilt refuted. The tears she had been holding back burst forth, but these were tears of joy and liberation. Aaron Black turned to her. "Miss, I apologize for everything you've been through." "I don't understand," Sarah said quietly. "Why are you doing this?" "Because the truth must be revealed," he said. "Now I think we need to talk." He turned and left the room, leaving behind the stunned manager, the humiliated Mrs. Stone, and the police officer who couldn't understand what was going on. Sarah, fighting the tremors running through her body, followed him. She had no idea where he was taking her, or what he was going to say, but she was infinitely grateful to him for saving her from injustice, deception, and a nightmare that could have destroyed her. She was ready to listen to everything he had to say. Aaron led Sarah to a quiet corner of the shopping center, a small cafe hidden from the eyes of passers-by. At a table surrounded by greenery and a babbling fountain, they were finally able to talk quietly, without the hustle and bustle and prying eyes. Sarah was still in a state of confusion. Sitting across from her was a billionaire, the man who had saved her, and she didn't know how to start the conversation. Her body was still trembling slightly, but it wasn't from fear. It was from indescribable excitement. "Have some water," Aaron said, offering her a glass. "You need to collect your thoughts." Sarah squeezed the glass tightly in her trembling hand and took a few sips. The cold liquid brought her back to normal a little. She looked at him, her voice barely audible. "I don't know how to express my gratitude, Mr. Black." "Why did you intervene?" Aaron shrugged. "I just couldn't stand by and watch injustice. Mrs. Stone is certainly known for her difficult personality, but that doesn't justify accusing innocent people. And the manager, he's just a coward, scared of losing a wealthy customer." I couldn't stay silent. His words were sincere and simple, and Sarah felt she could trust him. "I never thought I'd be a detective in a store," he added, a slight smile playing on his lips. "But you could have just walked by," Sarah objected. "You don't even know me." "I know you now," Aaron replied. "And I can't remain indifferent to injustice. I believe that truth must prevail, and it has prevailed." He took a sip of coffee and looked at her intently. "Tell me, Sarah, what's bothering you so much?" he asked. "I've noticed that your sadness isn't just about work, is it?" Sarah, struck by his insight, bowed her head. "No," she whispered softly. "My mother is ill. She needs expensive treatment, but I can't afford it. I have a younger brother who is talented and intelligent, and I want to give him the opportunity to study at a prestigious college." Aaron listened attentively, without interrupting or expressing any emotion, simply giving her his full attention. When she finished, he took her hand, and his gentle, sincere touch was so warm that she couldn't pull it away. "Sarah, you are a strong girl," he said. "You carry a huge burden of responsibility, and I am sure that your mother and brother are proud of you. But I am convinced that what happened to you today must be righted in some way. I don't need anything, Sarah replied immediately. You've already done too much for me. It's not just that, Aaron replied calmly. It's my duty. I believe I have to help someone who has been the victim of someone else's stupidity and lies. I'm offering you a job. I have several companies, and I need someone who doesn't back down in the face of adversity and always stands up for the truth. Start as my personal assistant. I'm sure you'll do well. I'll make sure your brother gets into the college he wants and that your mother gets the best treatment. I'll cover all the expenses. Sarah was in shock. She found it hard to believe what she was hearing. It was too good to be true. She looked at him incredulously. Why are you doing this? She asked. It's too generous. I'm not doing this for myself, Aaron said. I'm doing this for you. You deserve it. You're not a thief. You're a real hero. The confidence in his words made Sarah's heart beat faster. She looked at him and saw not pity in his eyes, but sincere respect. At that moment, she realized that this wasn't just charity, but a unique opportunity. An opportunity to change her life, to help her family. I agree, she whispered. Thank you. Aaron smiled, and it was the first real smile she had seen on his face. In that case, he said, our agreement is sealed. Now I think we should go to your house, and I'd like to meet your family. The journey from the city center to the outskirts was like entering a different reality. Luxury stores, gleaming skyscrapers, and wide avenues gave way to narrow streets, old houses, and modest shops. Aaron drove Sarah in his luxurious car, which looked completely out of place in this neighborhood. Images of her everyday life flashed by outside the window, and Sarah felt uncomfortable, as if she were traveling through her past life, but now as a guest. My house is not far from here, she said, breaking the silence. Aaron nodded. But that doesn't matter, he said. What matters is what's inside. His words were concise, but they sounded so deeply kind that they touched her to the core. She realized that he wasn't judging her or trying to evaluate her, but simply accepting her for who she was. They stopped in front of a small but neat and clean house. Sarah felt uneasy. She didn't know how to introduce this man to her family or how to explain that he was a billionaire who had unexpectedly, for no apparent reason, decided to offer them a helping hand. As they entered the house, they were greeted by Mike. When he saw Sarah, his eyes filled with surprise and joy. However, his gaze immediately fell on Aaron, and a look of caution flashed across Mike's face. He was very similar to his father, tall, strong, with eyes full of distrust. Sarah, who is this man? He asked, turning to his sister. Mike, this is Mr. Black, Sarah replied. He's my new employer and our savior. Mike didn't believe her, but decided to keep quiet for now. Sensing the tension, Aaron smiled and held out his hand to Mike. Aaron Black, he said, and don't be afraid, I don't bite. I just wanted to meet your family. Mike, as if under the influence of Aaron's sincere and warm smile, felt the tension leave him. He shook the outstretched hand. Entering her mother's room, Helen was taken aback when she saw Aaron. She was confused, not understanding what was going on. Mom, this is Mr. Black, Sarah explained, approaching her. He wants to help us. He'll pay for your treatment and help Mike get into college. Tears welled up in Helen's pale, illness-ravaged face. Could this be possible? I can't believe it. Why? She whispered softly. Because your daughter is the most honest and courageous person I have ever known, Aaron said, approaching her, and she deserves this happiness. Your family deserves this happiness. Aaron treated them not as people in need, but as partners. He shared his idea. He would pay for her mother's treatment and sponsor Mike's college education. He also told Sarah in detail about her new position, noting that she would start working at his company the following week, and emphasizing that he believed in her abilities and potential. Sarah, Mike, and Helen listened to him with bated breath. They were overcome with a feeling of incredible happiness. They couldn't believe that this man, who could have ignored them, had decided to radically change their lives. Aaron, noticing their amazement, stood up. I think it's time for us to go, he said. You have a lot to talk about. Tomorrow I'll send a car for Sarah and she can start work. Don't worry about anything, just trust my guidance. His departure left the house in silence. No one could believe it wasn't a dream. Mike was completely stunned. "He's really going to pay for my education?" he asked Sarah, his voice trembling. "Yes," Sarah replied, a smile lighting up her face. Her mother, Helen, was overcome with happiness. She hugged Sarah and Mike, and her heart was filled with hope she hadn't felt in many years. For the first time in a long time, she felt that her children were safe and had a bright future ahead of them. Leaving Sarah and her family, Aaron returned to his car. He got behind the wheel but was in no hurry to leave. He just sat there and watched the house, warm yellow light streaming from the windows. A smile played on his lips. His heart was filled with confidence. He had made the right choice. This family deserved happiness and the girl deserved better. His story was so similar to Sarah's that he was overcome with nostalgia and pain. His thoughts carried him back to the past, to a time when he was just like Sarah, proud but with unhealed wounds that held the memory of his poverty. At 18, he lived in a tiny apartment with his mother, who had to work 2 jobs to support them. His father had left them when he was still a child. Aaron, like Sarah, worked from dawn to dusk. His only dream was to earn enough money to pay for his studies, although he knew that becoming an architect, his dream profession, was almost impossible. One day, while working as a dishwasher in a modest cafe, Aaron made a mistake. In his haste, he dropped several plates, and the manager, a heavy-set and arrogant man, immediately lashed out at him in anger. "You loser!" he shouted, his face flushing with rage. "You have to pay for them." "I didn't mean to," whispered young Aaron, his hands trembling. "I can stay after my shift and work it off." "No working it off!" shouted the manager. "You're fired, and don't you dare show your face here again. You're a thief, you stole those plates." These words, spoken with such fury, were an unfair accusation. He hadn't stolen anything. He was just a poor boy trying to earn a little money. But no one understood him or wanted to listen to him. He was left defenseless, abandoned to his fate like an old dog, and he had to find a new job. At that moment, he realized that in this world, truth is priceless, and power is the only thing that matters. He promised himself that one day he would be strong enough to protect himself and those around him from injustice. He was determined never to let evil triumph. The moment he saw Sarah, a memory came flooding back. He saw her tears, her despair, her fear in the face of hopelessness. He recognized himself in her, the young man who had been wronged. He couldn't remain indifferent. He couldn't let her go through what he had once gone through. He started the car and drove off. But now the road didn't just lead him home. It was a path to change, to a new stage in his life. He not only helped Sarah, but also took a step toward his own healing. At last, he was able to atone for his past guilt, to protect the boy he once was, frightened and wounded. He was able to change the world, even if only for one person, and that was the most valuable achievement for him. For Sarah, the next morning marked the beginning of a new life. She woke up filled with excitement and a sense of anticipation. For the first time in many years, she felt not tired, but refreshed and energized. Her old, worn-out clothes were neatly tucked away in the closet, replaced by an elegant but simple suit that Peter had given her on the day they met. This suit was not just new clothes. It symbolized her rebirth. When she left the house, Sarah found a shiny black car waiting at the door. A polite, elderly driver in uniform got out and said, "Miss Sarah, Mr. Black asked me to take you to the office." Sarah, feeling a mixture of surprise and confusion, got into the car. The journey that used to take her over an hour on 2 buses was now reduced to 20 minutes. Through the window, she watched as familiar streets gave way to wide avenues and old buildings to modern skyscrapers. She felt as if she had stepped into a fairy tale. When she entered Aaron's office, she was truly shocked. It wasn't just an office, it was a palace. Huge windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The air was filled with the aroma of coffee and the intertwined pages of expensive books, and the marble floor beneath her feet created a feeling of exclusivity. She felt tiny and out of place in this luxury. Sarah was greeted by a young woman named Jennifer, Aaron's personal assistant. "Hi, Sarah," she said with a smile. "My name is Jennifer. Mr. Black asked me to show you to your office, as he is in a meeting right now." Jennifer, like Aaron, was polite, calm, and sincere. She did not show any superiority over Sarah, but treated her with respect and kindness. Jennifer showed Sarah her desk, which was next to her own. A new computer, pens, and notepads were already waiting on the desk. Everything was shiny and new. "Your first task is to help me sort through Mr. Black's mail," Jennifer said. "He has a huge mail flow, and we need to prioritize the letters. I'll show you how to do it." Sarah, who had no previous experience with such a large volume of correspondence, felt a little out of her depth. However, Jennifer explained everything in detail, and soon Sarah was immersed in her work. She proved to be a very capable employee, quickly picking up new skills and demonstrating remarkable attention to detail. When she finished work, Sarah was exhausted, but it was a pleasant kind of tiredness. She felt that she had accomplished something significant, that her work was not just a routine but part of something bigger. When she got home that evening, she was greeted by her family. "So, how was your first day?" her mother asked excitedly. Sarah smiled. "It was just amazing." She shared details about her new job, about Jennifer, about the letter processing process. She didn't share her surprise at Aaron's wealth. She was content to simply note his kindness and honesty. At that moment, she experienced a feeling unlike any other. She was the happiest person in the world. Her mother was reassured, her brother was hopeful, and she herself had a clear goal. She knew that life would never be the same again. She had a long and difficult road ahead of her, but she was ready for it. A new beginning full of possibilities awaited her, and she was ready to prove to Aaron that he had not been wrong to believe in her. Several weeks had passed since Sarah started working for Aaron Black's company. These weeks turned her life upside down, bringing radical changes. The new work schedule, although intense, allowed Sarah to spend her evenings with her loved ones. In the morning, she was driven to work, and in the evening, she returned home, energized by new experiences. Thanks to Aaron, her mother was able to start treatment, and they were able to provide her with better medical care. Her mother's face took on a healthy glow, and her eyes lit up with hope. Now Mike, the girl's brother, could confidently devote himself to his studies, knowing that his dream of going to college was becoming a reality. Sarah, on the other hand, transformed from a frightened saleswoman into a confident assistant. Jennifer admired her diligence and quick wit. Sarah quickly absorbed new knowledge, easily handled any task, and showed exceptional attention to detail. Jennifer often told Aaron, "Sarah is a real treasure. She works better than many of our more experienced employees." Aaron just smiled when he looked at her. He was sure he had made the right decision in giving her this opportunity. One day, Aaron invited Sarah into his office. Sarah entered, feeling a little nervous. "Please, have a seat, Sarah," Aaron said, pointing to a chair. "I'd like to talk to you about something important." Sarah sat down, her heart beating faster. She was afraid she had made a mistake somewhere. "Don't worry, you haven't done anything wrong," Aaron reassured her, as if reading her mind. "On the contrary, I'm very pleased with your work. My expectations of you have exceeded all my expectations, and that's why I want to entrust you with a more serious assignment. I have a project that is very important to me, and I hope you can help me with it. It won't be an easy task, but I'm sure you can handle it." Sarah nodded with surprise and joy. "I'll do everything I can, Mr. Black," she replied. "I have no doubt you will," he said, and his face lit up with the same warm smile she had seen on the day they first met. On the same day that Sarah was sorting through Aaron's mail, her mother called her. "Sarah, my dear." Her mother's voice was so full of joy that Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "The doctor just called. He said my treatment is going well, and I have every chance of making a full recovery." "Mom, that's wonderful." Sarah was ecstatic. "That's wonderful. I'm so grateful to Mr. Black," her mother shared. "He saved us and gave us hope." "Yes, Mom," Sarah replied. "He's an angel." After their conversation, Sarah felt an incredible surge of strength. She realized that she owed everything to Aaron, and was determined to do everything she could not to disappoint him. Just as Sarah was about to leave, Jennifer approached her. "Mr. Black, the other employees, and I have decided to go to a restaurant on Friday evening. Mr. Black wants to celebrate your successful start," she invited. Sarah, unaccustomed to such events, was taken aback. "I'm not sure." "Don't worry," Jennifer reassured her. "It's just a friendly dinner. You deserve it." Sarah remembered that this could be a wonderful opportunity to thank Aaron, and agreed. she felt her life transforming. The timid, defenseless girl had disappeared, replaced by a strong, confident woman who stood up for her happiness, and she was ready to meet a new challenge. Friday evening arrived, and Sarah, dressed in her most beautiful dress, went to the restaurant. It was one of the most elegant establishments in the city, and Sarah felt a little out of place amid such luxury, but the warm smiles of Jennifer and Aaron, who greeted her at the entrance, calmed her nerves a little. "Sarah, you look gorgeous," exclaimed Jennifer, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I'm so happy you agreed to come." Aaron approached Sarah, his gaze intense and lingering a little longer than usual. "Welcome, Sarah," he said softly. "We're glad you joined us." Sarah felt pleasantly embarrassed. She wasn't used to such a warm welcome. They sat down at a large round table. Soon they were joined by Aaron's partner, Mark. He was a tall man with thick dark hair curled into ringlets and eyes full of mischievous sparkle. Unlike Aaron, who radiated calm and restraint, Mark was the embodiment of energy and joie de vivre. His charisma and charm were undeniable. When he saw Sarah, his smile grew even wider. "Aaron, you didn't mention that we had such a wonderful colleague joining us," Mark said, turning to Aaron. "I'm Mark, your closest and only partner." Sarah blushed and replied, "Sarah, it's very nice to meet you." Mark sat down next to her and struck up a conversation. He was interested in her life, her dreams, and how she ended up at the company. His attentiveness touched Sarah so much that she felt very pleased. She could sense his genuine interest in her story and didn't notice how quickly time flew by. Their conversation turned to books, music, and their dreams. It turned out they had a lot in common. They were both avid readers, and Mark, like her, was incredibly hardworking. "Aaron, you should have told me you met such a wonderful girl," Mark exclaimed. "Smart and beautiful, too." Sarah was embarrassed, not knowing how to react. She had never been in such a situation before. All her thoughts were occupied with her family and work. Her personal life had never been part of her plans. Aaron, sitting across from them, silently watched their conversation. He watched Sarah and Mark talk, their faces sparkling with laughter, their eyes burning with fire. A strange, incomprehensible feeling arose in his soul. On the one hand, he was happy that Sarah had found someone who understood her. On the other hand, a shadow of jealousy flashed through his chest, and he couldn't understand what that feeling was. He had always been her support, her mentor, but he had never had romantic feelings for her. Or was that just his imagination? The evening was drawing to a close. Mark got up from the table and turned to Sarah. "I hope we'll meet again. Maybe you'd like to have dinner with me sometime?" Sarah, embarrassed but feeling pleasantly excited, replied, "Yes, I'd love to." They exchanged phone numbers, and Mark left, leaving Sarah in a state of slight confusion. An inexplicable feeling came over her. It was like excitement, like anticipation of something unknown. Her gaze fell on Aaron, and in his eyes she saw something that made her heart beat faster, something that resembled jealousy. But she immediately dismissed the thought. Aaron was her boss, her savior. There could be no relationship between them other than a professional one based on gratitude. However, she intuitively felt that this evening was a turning point that changed everything. Her life, which had just found stability, was once again turned upside down. After dinner, the morning was filled with magic. When she woke up, Sarah's first thought was of Mark. His smile, his eyes, his voice, all of it haunted her. She felt confused and slightly frightened, but at the same time, she felt an indescribable joy. She had never thought about dating before. Her life was all about work and taking care of her loved ones. But Mark, he was an exception. As she was enjoying her morning coffee, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number appeared on the display, but her intuition told her it was him. "Hi, Sarah," Mark's voice rang out. "It's Mark. I couldn't help but call to say that last night was one of the best nights of my life. I'd love to do it again. How about dinner this weekend?" Sarah, feeling embarrassed and filled with indescribable joy, replied, "Yes, Mark, I'd love to." Sarah shared the news with her mother and brother. Her mother, who already knew Mark from Sarah's stories, was very happy. "I'm so happy for you, dear," she whispered. "You deserve the best. He seems like a very nice guy." Mike, her brother, however, was more reserved. Sarah, be careful, he warned. Not everything is as good as it seems. I know, Mike, she replied, her voice sounding so convincing that Mike believed her. His eyes sparkled with the reflection of his sister's shining eyes, and he was sure that she deserved the best in life. Aaron, who was present at the meeting, learned from Jennifer that Mark had called Sarah. He asked her out on a date, Jennifer shared, unable to hide her smile. Aaron, his expression unchanged, said nothing. Inside, however, everything was boiling. He felt a strange, incomprehensible pain, unlike anger or jealousy. It was something deeper, something that caused a feeling of loss of something very important. He couldn't identify the feeling. After all, he was her savior. He had helped her and given her a new life. But he was not her chosen one. And only with Mark's appearance did he realize that he never would be. The meeting with Mark turned out to be simply unforgettable. They chose a small, cozy restaurant with a simple and relaxed atmosphere. Far from luxury and pretension, they simply enjoyed each other's company, conversation, and laughter. Mark shared stories from his life with her, told her about his dreams and his business. He was an intelligent and ambitious man, but at the same time incredibly kind and sincere. He didn't emphasize his wealth, but talked about his family and friends. He was a very open person. Sarah, in turn, shared details of her life with him, telling him about her family, her aspirations, and her hopes. She wasn't afraid to be honest, nor was she afraid of appearing fragile or poor to him. She was confident that he wouldn't judge her, because she felt his sincere understanding. The evening flew by unnoticed. As he walked her home, he gently kissed her cheek. "Thank you, Sarah," he said. "This has been the most wonderful evening of my life. I look forward to seeing you again." "Me too," she replied in a quiet voice. As she entered the house, she was filled with happiness. She was in love. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she felt that her life, which had just found stability, had been turned upside down again, and it was a pleasant, exciting turn. Several weeks flew by, and the bond between Sarah and Mark grew stronger every day. They saw each other every day, spent their evenings together, went to the movies, and walked in the park. Sarah felt truly happy. Mark was intelligent, cheerful, and surprisingly kind. He didn't look down on her, but treated her with sincere respect and love, seeing in her not a former saleswoman, but a beautiful, intelligent woman worthy of happiness. Aaron, watching their relationship develop, had mixed feelings. On the one hand, he was genuinely happy for Sarah because he saw how she was transforming next to Mark, how she glowed with her smile and laughed so freely. He knew she deserved this happiness. But at the same time, a strange, painful longing was growing in his heart. One fine day, he called her into his office. "Sarah," he said, his voice cold and distant. "How are you?" Sarah, accustomed to his calmness, instinctively sensed that something was wrong. "Everything's fine, Mr. Black," she replied. "Thank you for asking." "Good," he said. "And how is Mark? You seem to be spending a lot of time together." Sarah blushed and replied, "Yes, Mr. Black, we're dating." "I see," he said. "I hope he treats you well." "Yes, he's very nice," Sarah replied, unaware of what was happening. Aaron, usually silent about his personal life, suddenly asked, "Do you love him?" Sarah, stunned by his unexpected question, was taken aback and replied, "I don't know, but I think I do." Aaron nodded, letting her go. He was torn by conflicting emotions. He was furious with himself. He couldn't understand what had prompted him to ask such a personal question, or where the intense pain had come from. When Sarah answered, later, he called Jennifer. "Jennifer," he said, "imagine you have a friend who introduces you to a girl, becomes her mentor, her protector, and then she starts dating his friend. What would you advise him to do?" Jennifer, known for her quick wit and insight, understood immediately. She looked at Aaron, her eyes showing neither shock nor judgment, only deep understanding. "I would advise him to be honest," she replied. "Be honest about his feelings, and be honest with her. She deserves the truth." Aaron was silent, just staring out the window and looking at the city. He couldn't be honest. He couldn't admit his feelings, couldn't destroy her happiness. He couldn't destroy his friendship with Mark. He was in a hopeless situation. That evening, Aaron called Mark. "Mark," he began, "how are things going with Sarah?" "Everything's great, Aaron," Mark replied, his voice brimming with boundless happiness. "Sarah, she's just incredible. So kind, so smart." "I think I'm in love," he confessed. Aaron was silent. He just listened as his best friend shared his feelings about the girl he was in love with. At that moment, Aaron realized that his life had changed forever. He was at a crossroads, faced with a difficult choice, and he didn't know which path to take. Aaron felt trapped. He had always been a man in complete control of his life, his business, his relationships, even his emotions. But now he felt that control slipping away. His feelings for Sarah, which he had tried so hard to suppress, were growing stronger every day. He watched her blossom alongside Mark, and it caused him unbearable pain. He couldn't explain where this pain was coming from. After all, he was happy for her. At the same time, he felt like he was losing something he never had a chance to have. His unusual behavior did not go unnoticed. Mark, who had known Aaron since childhood, immediately realized that something was wrong. Aaron became withdrawn, irritable, and tried to avoid him. One day, after another conversation, Mark stopped him. "Aaron, what's wrong?" he asked. "You're acting strange. Is it because of me and Sarah?" Aaron was silent, unable to answer. He just looked at his friend, his partner, his close friend, and couldn't tell him the truth. He couldn't admit that his feelings for this girl were the same as his feelings for Mark. "No," he finally said. "It's not because of you. I just have a lot going on." "Don't try to convince me, Aaron," Mark said. "I know you. We've been friends for 20 years. I can tell when you're lying. You're in love with Sarah, aren't you?" Aaron bowed his head, unable to lie any longer. "Yes," he muttered. "I'm in love." Mark was struck as if by lightning. He couldn't believe his ears. His closest friend, his brother, had fallen in love with his beloved, the woman who meant so much to him. "Why didn't you say anything until now?" "Why didn't you tell me?" Mark asked, his voice filled with pain. "I didn't want to ruin your happiness," Aaron replied. "I didn't want to destroy our friendship. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I can't stand seeing you together." Mark was silent for a long time, then said, "Aaron, I don't understand. You were like an angel to her. Why didn't you tell her the truth?" "I couldn't," Aaron said simply. "I couldn't use my power. I couldn't use what I had done for her. I wanted her to make her choice for a different reason, the same reason I chose her." Mark listened to his words and understood everything. He sensed Aaron's pain, his fear, his tender affection. Mark realized that Aaron wasn't a bad man. He was just a man consumed by the loss of himself. "I don't know what to do," Mark admitted. "I can't leave Sarah. I love her. And I can't leave you either. You're my brother." "I don't know either," Aaron replied. "I just don't know what to do." At that moment, Sarah, unaware of anything, was working hard on Aaron's project. She was filled with enthusiasm and inspiration, seeing this as a chance to prove her worth and earn the trust placed in her. Her thoughts were completely absorbed in her work, but another thought still lingered in her heart: Mark. She knew she loved him, that they were meant for each other. When she returned home, her family was waiting for her. Her mother was already up, and Mike had passed all his exams with flying colors. Their joy was genuine, and Sarah was happy too. She had no idea of the inner conflict unfolding in the hearts of the two men who were madly in love with her. She didn't know that her well-being was hanging by a thread. Aaron's announcement came as a shock to Mark. He froze, unable to believe what he had heard. His best friend, his brother, had fallen in love with the same girl he loved, the girl who held a special place in his heart. Mark was in despair, tormented by anger and pain. The world around him seemed to be falling apart. But Mark knew that Aaron was telling the truth. He knew that Aaron wasn't a bad person. He was just a man who couldn't control his feelings. "I don't know what to say," Mark whispered, his voice trembling. "I thought you were happy for us." "I was happy," Aaron replied, his words tinged with pain. "I was happy for both of you. I wanted you to be happy, but I couldn't handle it. I couldn't stand seeing you together. It was killing me." Mark listened to him and realized that Aaron was being sincere. He knew him too well to believe that Aaron would ever admit his feelings unless he felt them with all his heart. Mark finally broke the silence. Aaron, I can't leave Sarah. I love her, and I can't give up on you either. You understand that this is impossible for me. I understand, Aaron replied. I'm not asking you to give her up. I just wanted you to know the truth. Mark shook his head. It's not fair. It's unfair to me, to you, and most importantly, to Sarah. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know that her well-being is at stake. She deserves to know the truth. She should have the right to make her own choice. Aaron looked at him. What do you mean? He asked. You have to tell her the truth, Mark said firmly. You have to reveal your feelings to her. She's smart, she'll understand, and she'll make her own choice. Aaron was shocked. He hadn't expected that reaction. He thought Mark would be angry, he thought Mark hated him. But instead, Mark was challenging his rival to fight for her love. Meanwhile, Sarah, unaware of the trouble brewing, was getting ready for her date with Mark. Smiling, she sat on her bed and imagined their walk in the park and their heartfelt conversations. She was so overwhelmed with happiness that she didn't notice how quickly the hours had passed. She felt that she had finally found happiness and was convinced that Mark was her destiny. Back in his office, Aaron was deep in thought. Mark's words, Sarah, his own honor, it was all spinning around in his head. He couldn't do anything else. He had to tell her the truth, give her a choice. He couldn't let her live in the dark, not knowing everything. His feelings could not remain hidden. He had to be honest. He took out his phone and dialed her number. Sarah, he whispered, his voice trembling. Are you free? I need to discuss something with you. Sarah was surprised to hear his call. Yes, Mr. Black. I'm free, she replied. Is something wrong? Yes. His voice suddenly became firm and confident. Something important has happened. I need to see you. The meeting with Aaron was scheduled for the evening, after work. Sarah awkwardly explained to Mark that she had an urgent errand from her boss and left for the office. Her heart was beating wildly. She couldn't make sense of what was happening. Aaron had never called her at this time of day before. On the way, she tried to think of a single good reason why he might have asked her to come, but none of them seemed convincing. When she entered his office, she found him sitting at his desk, staring out the window. For the first time, she noticed that his usual confidence and calmness were replaced by confusion. He seemed tired and lost in sad thoughts. He gestured for her to sit down in a chair, and she followed his example. Sarah, he began quietly, I asked you here to talk. This is a very important discussion for me. Sarah clenched her hands into fists nervously and asked, What's wrong? Did I make a mistake on a project? Aaron shook his head. No, Sarah, it's not about work. It's about me, you, and Mark. Sarah tensed instantly when she heard Mark's name. Did something happen? She asked anxiously. Yes, Aaron's voice trembled. It has. Sarah, I'm in love with you. Sarah was stunned. She couldn't believe her ears. This man, her savior, her mentor, her boss, had just confessed his feelings to her. She stood silently, unable to move. The words stuck in her throat. Aaron, noticing her reaction, added, I know this sounds unbelievable. I know I should have told you about this a long time ago, but I didn't understand what was happening to me. I thought my feelings for you were just gratitude for your honesty and kindness. I thought I just wanted to help. But then Mark showed up and changed everything. I saw how successful you were with him, how you glowed, how you laughed. And then I realized that I wasn't just happy for you, I was jealous. And at that moment, I realized that I loved you. Sarah was lost in thought. Hundreds of thoughts racing through her head. She thought back to their first meeting, to the moment when he protected her and gave her a new life. She remembered his kindness, his calmness, his strength, qualities that had always inspired her admiration and respect. But love, she had never seen him in that light. Her heart belonged to Mark. Or was that just what she believed? I don't know what to say, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. You don't have to say anything, Aaron reassured her. I just wanted you to know. I've already told Mark. He thinks you need to know the whole truth so you can make your own decision. Mark, she asked in surprise. Yes, Aaron confirmed. He's my closest friend. I couldn't hide the truth from him. And I couldn't hide it from you either. I'm not asking you to leave Mark. I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm just asking you to be honest with yourself and with us." He stood up and left the office, leaving her alone. Sarah's mind was in turmoil. She loved Mark, but Aaron's words had awakened something in her heart that was more than just gratitude, something she had always felt but couldn't quite understand. Now that the truth was out, she was faced with a difficult choice that could turn her life upside down, her family, and the friendship of two men who loved her sincerely. Sarah was confused, seeing no way out and not knowing which path to choose. When Aaron left the office, Sarah remained in silence, which weighed on her like a heavy burden. She sat tensely in her chair, her heart pounding wildly, threatening to burst out of her chest. Sarah's mind was in chaos, unable to believe what she had heard. Aaron, her savior, the one to whom she owed everything, had confessed his love for her. And worse, he had shared it with Mark. She felt like she was stuck in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Her thoughts wandered, shifting from one name to another. Mark, his kindness, his infectious laugh, his love, all of it was so close and dear to her. She loved him, there was no doubt about that. But then, Aaron would pop into her mind. His strength, his calmness, his insight. She had always felt something more than just respect for him, something that remained a mystery to her. And now that the truth was clear, she had to make a choice that could tear apart the friendship of two people so dear to her heart. She couldn't sit still. She needed to talk to Mark, to hear his explanation. Leaving the office, she ignored Jennifer's surprised look and dialed Mark's number. "Mark," her voice trembled, "I need to talk to you urgently." "I know everything, Sarah," Mark replied, his voice tinged with pain. "Aaron told me everything. Let's meet somewhere." The park near the office became their meeting place. It was already dark, and only the streetlights lit their way. Mark sat on a bench, his expression full of sadness. Sarah approached and sat down next to him. "Mark," she began softly, "will you confirm it?" Mark nodded. "Yes, it's true. Aaron told me how he feels, and I decided you should know." "Why?" Sarah couldn't help asking. "Why did you do that?" "You deserve the truth," Mark replied seriously. "You can't live a lie. You need to know everything and make your own conscious choice." "But I love you," she whispered, barely audibly. "I know," Mark said, "and my feelings for you are real. But I don't have the right to fight for your love. You have to decide for yourself who you choose. You have to follow your heart, follow the one who is truly dear to you." Sarah was silent, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was crushed, unable to make a decision. She loved Mark, but Aaron's words evoked something more than just a response in her. "I can't," she said. "I can't choose." "I understand," Mark replied, "and I won't rush you. Just think about it. Think about who you really love. Who do you dream about? And when you decide, let me know." He stood up and left, leaving her in silence. Sarah sat on the bench, her face flooded with tears. She didn't know what to do. Her thoughts were in complete chaos. For several days, Sarah was deep in thought. She asked Mark and Aaron for some time to sort out her emotions. Not going to work, Sarah stayed at home, focusing all her thoughts on understanding what was happening in her heart. She remembered Mark, his kindness, his cheerfulness, his sincere affection. She thought about how he had helped her believe in herself, in her strengths, in her importance. Mark had been her first love in this new world, and even the thought of losing him caused her unbearable pain. In her thoughts, she returned again and again to Aaron. She remembered how he had appeared in her life. He was not just a man, he was her protector, her savior. He was the one who shielded her from injustice, gave her a chance at a new life, believed in her when everyone else doubted her. Something more than just love was growing in her heart for him. It was a deep, unspoken feeling that grew stronger with every moment they spent together. She felt that their destinies were intertwined, that their souls were bound by an invisible thread. He was her reflection, her double, her inseparable part. After much thought, she made a decision. Her heart, she realized, belonged to Aaron. She realized that even though she thought she was in love with Mark, Her feelings for Aaron were something deeper than love. It was true destiny. She called Mark first, her voice trembling with unspoken pain. "Mark," she whispered, "I need to talk." They met in the same park where their first encounter had left a mark on their hearts. In his eyes, full of former hope and love, she saw a reflection of her own suffering. "Mark," she began with difficulty, "I can't be with you. I thought I loved you, but I've found love with someone else." Tears prevented her from continuing. Mark, already sensing her decision, was hurt but remained strong and courageous. "I understand," he said. "It's impossible not to love him. But you're my friend and you always will be," she whispered, her eyes pleading. "I understand," Mark replied, a faint smile flickering across his face. "I won't hate you. We'll always be friends, and I wish you all the best." Jennifer met Sarah in the office. "Aaron is waiting for you," she said. "He's been waiting for you the whole time." Sarah entered Aaron's office. He was sitting at his desk, staring out the window. When he turned around, his face was filled with deep concern. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling, "I understand what I've done. I hope you can forgive me." "Aaron," Sarah replied, her eyes filling with tears, "I've forgiven you." She walked over to him and took his hand. "I've made my choice," she said. "And who did you choose?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "You," she replied. "I've always had feelings for you. I just didn't understand them." Aaron stood up and hugged her. It was their first hug, but it was so natural, so full of warmth that Sarah felt as if she had finally found her place. Several years later, Sarah and Aaron were enjoying the sunset from the terrace of their home, their hearts filled with happiness and love. Sarah was no longer just his assistant, but his equal partner. She had started her own company and was a successful businesswoman. Her mother had made a full recovery, and Mike had graduated from college with honors and was now working for Aaron's company. There was not a hint of regret in her eyes when she looked at Aaron. She was certain she had made the right choice. She had not just chosen a man, but her own path, her own destiny. She had chosen a man who had freed her from injustice and given her the opportunity for a new life. And for that, she was eternally grateful to him.